Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea Talks with Jiling, where we share tea, conversations, and camaraderie with visionary herbalists rippling positive change into their communities by connecting people, plants, and place. I'm Jiling, your host, acupuncturist, herbalist, and yoga teacher in Ventura, California on Herbal Radio, presented by Mountain Rose Herbs. I'm so honored and happy to introduce you to Felicia Cocotzin Ruiz today. Felicia is an indigenous foods activist, medicine maker, natural foods chef, and curandera. Her holistic wellness background spans over 25 years, working with grassroots activists, tribal leaders, top wellness resorts, and professional athletes, helping people reconnect to their ancestral foods, earth medicines, and health practices. In her first book, Earth Medicines, Ancestral Wisdom, Healing Recipes, and Wellness Rituals from a Curandera, she shares her expertise, time-honored natural remedies, and life-balancing regimens in a movement to reclaim the kitchen healer approach to health and wellness with indigenous wisdom and whole food cooking. Please make yourself comfortable, pour a cup of your favorite tea, and welcome to today's Tea Talk with Felicia. Hi, Felicia.
Hello, thank you for having me. And I'm very grateful that you read the bio because I didn't realize how much information is there.
Yeah, well, you've been around in the herbal and healing worlds for a long time, and I bet you it's just the tip of the iceberg, I'm sure.
A little bit, yes, but
Yeah.
it felt actually really nice to hear. Yeah.
A good reminder.
Yes.
Yeah. So in your beautiful book, Earth Medicines, you note that curanderismo is a 500-year-old traditional healing practice that is still in existence today, influenced by Spanish, indigenous, Mexican, West African, Moorish, and Native American medicine ways as a result of the blending of these cultures during colonization. And you earned the title of curandera in ceremony in 2018. So I'm curious, how did you step into your role as a curandera?
Well, I'm going to do my best to explain this, but I first want to say that many of our grandmothers and grandfathers and aunties and mothers are all curanderas. They might not say that they are when introducing themselves or something, but our community recognizes them as a curandera, depending what their area of expertise is. And that was a big part of my book, is making sure that we all recognize that we were all healers. However, the reason why I wanted to emphasize that I also earned that title was because it took me 23 years before my own community and elders really felt that they could call me that, or that I could call myself that. I think we're in a time when a lot of people can simply take, a weekend class or an online class, and now they feel that they can call themselves a curandera. However, in my culture, we've always been taught that, you can call yourself one, but honestly, it's not until your community recognizes you as one. And so after decades of just continuous learning, and I'll still be learning until, hopefully 23 more years, but my teachers and some of my elders said, you know what, it's time for you to address yourself that way. We recognize you that way. And that way, when I was teaching workshops or working with people, I was already doing that. At least I could say, I am a curandera.
Nice. Having that community support from the
Yes.
elders to back you when you're speaking in this way.
Right. So when I say earn the title, it really was, it took me a long time, but it was about being respectful to them and to the community.
Yeah. Beautiful. So as a curandera, what does your day-to-day life look like?
Wow, my day to day always begins with a little bell. And I do talk about this in the book. I've always had an ancestor altar, no matter where I lived, whether I was in an apartment or home. I'm in a townhome now. I've always made little spaces for my ancestor altar. So when I wake up, I ring a little bell and I proclaim, good morning, ancestors. Thank you so much for being here for me today. And I have a little conversation with them, make sure that there's water on the altar. And depending if I have a big task before me in that day, I might light a candle for gratitude and for help. But it's mainly starting with prayer. I also go for about a 20-minute walk every day, which depends, I'm in Arizona. So in the summertime, it might be at 5 o'clock in the morning before it gets too hot outside. Movement has always been a major part of my wellness. And so whether it was doing my morning walk or practicing Tai Chi, I like gentle movement in the morning. I'm not doing like a CrossFit class first thing, but I do like movement. And then I settle into my day, and that might be with warm tea or coffee, chai. It just depends what I'm up to that day, what I feel like. And then I just move into my day. Sometimes I'm seeing clients. Sometimes I'm teaching. Other times I'm doing things like this now virtually. I'm excited to say I'm not writing the book anymore because that was a big part of what my day to day looked like. So I feel like I'm actually falling back into my older rhythm.
Beautiful. There's so many elements from what you just said that I would like to come back to, starting with that piece around setting your intentions first thing in the morning. I would love to share your intentions from your book, Earth Medicines. Felicia, will you read that for us?
I would love to. I have it saved here. One of my teachers many years ago said that intention was everything. And I really held on to those words of wisdom. And so when I wrote the book, it only seemed natural to make sure that I had an intention for my readers. So after my introduction in the book, I have a couple of sentences here, and it says, so as with everything, I would like to start with an intention. My intention for this book is to remind those who read it that we are all healers, connecting with our higher source, our ancestors, and our inner lights. I pray all are divinely guided as they work with the medicines of water, air, earth, and fire. I pray that heart spaces open wide and feel the energy these medicines hold. And I hope gratitude is given daily to them for their gifts and helping us keep harmony of our beings. Noshtin no Maikayotzin to all of my relations.
Beautiful. So in weaving together this intention for your book, which addresses the personal as well as the communal, and in weaving together the intentions for how you set your day each day with the bell and sometimes the candle, how do you create and release your intentions? How do you structure these beautiful prayers?
I can't really say I have an exact way or formula. I mean, sometimes, I feel like some of my best ideas come from my morning walks. So sometimes on my morning walk, as I'm setting my intentions, I'll get an idea or I may arrive to an answer, and I kind of let it go on my walk with my movement. Sometimes I love just writing my intention down, whether it's even a goal or a dream or a prayer for someone else. And that might be tossing it into the fireplace, whatever feels like in that day ignites my intention is what feels natural to me, organic in that moment.
Yeah. So allowing it to organically and naturally arise as opposed to trying to push something out.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Also in the beginning of the book, you mentioned your grandma Chiquita or great grandma Delfinia sparking your passion for medicine making. Can you share a little bit about what she was like and how you learned with her?
Yes. Oh, this just gave me goosebumps because I feel like she's here with us in the conversation.
Mm.
She lived to be 94, and I got to know her until I was 13 when she passed on. And she was like the anchor to our family. She was this little tiny grandmother. So we called her Grandma Chiquita. And she was so knowledgeable. I love her story because, on her birth record, it says that she was born in the territory of Mexico. But when she passed away, she had passed on in the United States, but she never moved anywhere. So it just shows how, like, what I love talking about in the book, like so many of these things, our elders have been there for generations and generations, and the landscape and the borders may have changed, but their medicines were vital and strong, and they were practicing them all the time. And so my grandmother, she was born in Tijeras Canyon in New Mexico, which is near like the Sandia Mountains, if you're familiar with that area. And she was very curious and knowledgeable about the plants of the area. I believe that she was naturally gifted with like healing hands. For her age, into her 90s, we all have vivid memories of my grandmother, my great grandmother, like massaging us with like different salves. And she had hands of like a wrestler because she was so strong, and so she carried a lot of vital energy. I mean, really, she just was this little tiny grandmother with just so much healing energy. She was constantly praying for people and providing medicines. When she was younger, she would catch babies, meaning she was a midwife. So yeah, I'm really grateful because literally following her with, I remember a paper bag, just having her put herbs like in this bag, on the hills, following her on these hills near Pecos, New Mexico, and just not really explaining anything because she only spoke Spanish. And as children, we weren't allowed to speak Spanish. So I didn't understand her oftentimes, but I understood her. And I think that's how all of the grandchildren and great grandchildren, like we all understood her even without completely understanding what she was saying. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to go down that little memory portal with her.
Yeah. It sounds like you had a really sweet heart connection, and I can feel and imagine that she must be really proud of you with carrying on the Curandera torch.
Yes, when I want to say probably 20 years after her passing, there was a wooden box of her herbs that she had given to my grandmother, her daughter, and then my grandmother gave it to my mother. And so my mother had given it to me. And it was so incredible or actually, I didn't get the box of herbs. I got to take some of the herbs from the box. And so I remember opening this box, and it was just as strong. I felt like from the time she put the herbs in there, they were immortelle root, osha root, all of these roots in there. And
Wow.
it was like the moment I opened the box, it was like her essence, like also was like flew out of the box. It was so amazing. And the hat that I'm wearing today, I actually keep a little piece of root from that box of her medicine, just to always remind me the path that I'm on.
That's really sweet. You're rooted in your ancestry and you have a tangible remembrance and reminder tucked at your head.
Right. An actual roots, right?
It's so beautiful. So Grandma Chiquita really helped to inspire and inform this book. Who or what else helped to bring this book to fruition and inspire its origins?
I think my experiences, when I was a little girl, I loved writing stories. In fact, I think it was second grade, I won like this little contest for Young Authors Day. And I remember just feeling like I'm going to be an author someday. And I realized in moving into my adulthood, I was always a storyteller with part of my work, helping people relate to whatever it is that they were learning at the time. And I've also, don't even know how to explain this. I feel sometimes like an indigenous Forrest Gump. Like I've just had so many random experiences over the course of my now 50 years that they seem unbelievable, I feel. And so it gave me this opportunity to really write down like some of these experiences, and nothing really, I guess what was memorable to me in the book were simple experiences, but over the course of my life, I felt like I could share some of those stories with some of the people that I was meeting. And they were always just so enamored by this life I've had. And so I realized when I wanted to make the book that that was what people loved about my work, was being able to say, oh, there was a time when, and then I would share the story. And then it helped bring the recipe, the ritual, whatever the teaching was, it helped bring it to life versus, here are your lists of ingredients and this is how they're good for you. And off you go. It was like they had something visual to connect it to.
Yeah. And I noticed also in the book, with telling the story, you were able to introduce some of the native names for the plants so that later when you share the recipe or ritual, including the plants, you can use the traditional or indigenous name instead of the American or English version of the name.
Right, which is oftentimes, just a perfect example. I don't have the spelling or the pronunciation in my mind right now, but here we are during this holiday season when people celebrate Christmas and have poinsettias all over. And that's such a beautiful example of what I was trying to create in the book, was to help people see with new vision that poinsettias are actually named after a colonizer who gave that name and really was trying to take out the indigenous symbolism to the poinsettia, because it's actually a very important Aztec plant, a Mexican plant, and yet we don't associate that at all. And so that was a big part of my wanting to share in that book, was making sure that people know that these plants are very, very old and sacred, and they have their own stories before they received what we would say now poinsettia, right? Their new names.
Yeah, allowing to open that vision up and expand beyond current awareness.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. What was your book writing process like? And you mentioned that before, when you were still writing the book, it dominated a lot of your day. How long did it take for you to create your first book?
From start to finish, it was 2.5 years, and not 2.5 years of solid writing, because, part of that was also the photographs and things, the recipe testing and everything in between. But I really would dedicate probably 10 o'clock in the morning until about 2, 5 days a week of just writing, rewriting, and then I would have to give that segment to the editor to kind of read. And then, there was just so many layers for anyone that's never written a book with a publisher. I mean, there's so many layers. It was a new process for me. And even though this wasn't a cookbook necessarily, or like a novel, it was like a mixture of everything, so there were recipe testings, but then I was also needing help with perhaps some of the grammar of the story. So it was a very in-depth, long process. I remember saying, I never want to do this again because it was so much work. But what's so funny is I actually I miss the discipline that I had while writing the book. It was a very good exercise for me.
Do you think you'll do it again?
I do. I really do. And I didn't think I would say that so soon after, but I realized that there's so much that I still want to share in perhaps another cookbook, more around the whole food cooking part. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see it when when number 2 comes out, whenever that might be.
I know it kind of reminded me of like when you are dating someone and they say, when are you going to get married? And then you get married and they ask, when are you going to have children? And then you have one children. They say, when are you going to have another one? That was the feeling. I remember, I think the first interview I had, the book was like 1 day old and they were saying, when's your next book? I couldn't fathom that. But now that a month or so has gone by, I'm realizing, wow, that really was such a wonderful experience. It was challenging for sure, but it was a great experience.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of discipline. 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 days a week, sitting there writing. Amazing.
Right. Yeah. Writing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in this book, Earth Medicines, you draw on the powers of water, air, earth, and fire for your recipes and rituals, reminding us that the elements are the origins of everything and can heal not only our body, but also our mind and spirit. How does the 4 elements interweave in your culture?
Wow, it's actually in every nook and cranny. I think that all people, we do, no matter whatever culture you come from, right? We all have a connection to the elements. And I think some are perhaps more obvious than others. I think of like my friend, the photographer for the book, she's Persian. And I remember over the years, like, for their festivals where we were jumping over fire, depending on the different time of year. So I feel like every culture has water, air, earth, and fire in them, but it's not, I think the religious part sometimes, or your day-to-day, overshadows the actual rituals that are underlying in all of these little things that we do. Something I love to share, and I actually think I did share this in the book, maybe I didn't, was the act of blowing out a birthday candle. We're making a wish on a little flame, and to me that has roots somewhere. How did that begin? And so it's just something as simple as that maybe people don't even think about, that we're working with those elements every day.
Yeah. In Chinese medicine, we also have elements. We've got 5 elements in Chinese medicine, and they're sequenced in a certain way. Some people sequence them in one way, some people sequence them in another way. And then Ayurveda usually has a sequence for their also 5 elements. And I'm curious, for your sequencing in this book of the water, air, earth to fire, how does that sequence flow for you, or is that the traditional rhythm for your people?
Yeah, so I would say, okay, let me think how to phrase this. So I did not place an order in with the elements in writing the book. I knew only that I was going to start with water. And the only reason why I wanted to start with water is because I felt for my own self that was so much where we start in the womb. And that felt like I was birthing something new with this book. And so it felt really natural for me to start with the element of water. My father passed away shortly after writing the water chapter. And in the book, I talk about how the air, for me, very much represents our ancestors and just that essence and their energy going out into the air. So I decided to write the air chapter next. And then I found myself feeling like I wanted to really get grounded and rooted. And so then I went to earth. And then I was like, okay, I'm releasing this book out into the universe. And I had written entries about working with fire to ignite like your passions, your desires, your goals, all of those things. So I made that the last chapter.
So the trajectory of the elements in the book follows the trajectory of your life as you were creating this book.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was very cautious to make sure that because the lineage of curanderismo that I follow is the Mexica way, our directions always begin in the East. And for us, the direction of the East is fire. But I didn't feel comfortable starting with fire. And I'm so glad I didn't, because like I said, it felt for me that I was birthing this piece of work, which is why I don't know, I just wanted to start with water, even though in our tradition, the beginning of everything, infancy begins with that East direction. And so I just followed my intuition, which is what I tell people through and through in the book, to follow your own gut. And again, it just, the way it happened to me, I can't imagine it any other way.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And also because I've been focusing a lot on the elements in my work, reading through your book and reading about these pieces and feeling that connection just felt really, really juicy for me.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah. And in returning to the book yet again, there's a prayer that begins each of the chapters where the book is organized according to the elements. And will you share a little prayer for each of the elements, either from the book or in the moment?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is, only because I have my book right here and I'm sitting by a fire right now outside, and it feels like I'm not 100% sure when your podcast is coming out.
Probably March.
March. Okay.
Yeah. So springtime.
So springtime. Oh, I like that. Okay. I like that. So how about we work with, I speak the prayer from earth, because that's when everything's starting to grow and come back to life and whatnot. So every the beginning of every chapter, I created a little prayer to each element. So this one is prayer to earth. Nourishing, grounding, and precious earth, you are the wise mother to all that lives upon your back. Your unconditional love supports me and keeps me rooted. When I feel disharmony, your constant guidance can be sensed by simply standing on your being. I honor and thank you for allowing me to embody your spirit through your earth medicines, and ask you to forgive us humans for not caring for you as we should. May we see ourselves in every living being, and may we heal you as you continue to heal us.
Beautiful. So beginning with that grounding presence.
Right. That seems very, I like that for springtime.
Yeah. Lovely. And what other recipes or rituals from the book do you most frequently share or practice, or would like to share with listeners today as an action step?
Well, one thing that I feel that I have been asked time and time again, which is why I put it in the book, were the oils that I use on my skin. I just turned 50 in September, and I have to say, like, my skin feels really good. And
you look gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I just feel like my skin actually feels really good. If it looks great, even better, right? But it just feels good. And I attribute that to all of the oils that I've been putting on my skin now since my early 20s. And I have one recipe that I've just made over and over and over again, maybe changing a little drop or two, trying something new, but I just go back to the same one. And that's with the frankincense, rose, and the jojoba. And the avocado oil. And so that is one recipe that I use every single day. And it is the recipe that probably many people have asked, and that is just how to protect your skin. Where I live here in the Sonoran Desert, it's so dry. And so I think that having that oil on my skin every day has really protected it, but it's nourished it. And the frankincense and the rose, I feel, has always been like almost like opposites, because rose to me is very much like a heady and a heart space, aromatic, where the frankincense felt very rooted and just a little earthier. So combining the two, I feel such harmony when I wear this blend. And so when people are asking me for oils recipes, what they usually do will make that recipe, and then they realize later that something else that they were experiencing softened. And I think it's because of the frankincense and the rose.
So it's a magical potion to make you look young forever, as well as elevate and ground your experience.
Yes. So and that's what I'll have. That's what I'll say about it now. It's a magical potion. But it is. It's like so nourishing, so nourishing for your skin. But something about those two properties together, I think, just help people stay rooted, but also not so rooted that you're stuck. Like it's very uplifting as well.
And sacred medicines too. Really
Yes.
ancient sacred resin with frankincense.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, as we begin wrapping up, I would love to wonder with you. You have a unique voice as an indigenous Mexican, Spanish, and Tewa curandera and healer. What words of wisdom do you have to share with the next generation of healers?
I would love to see this next generation embrace all parts of them, because that took a lot of time for me to do. I think a lot of Black and Brown people in this country, especially, like we've just endured a lot, and coming to terms with, decolonization and colonization, and just all of the work that we're putting into making ourselves feel whole, right, has really been difficult for many people. We're breaking a lot of generational trauma with our healing ways. And again, this path of healing that I'm on does incorporate colonizer ways as well with the Spaniards. And when the Spaniards arrived, they brought with them also beautiful medicines. And to me, at least what I have been taught, the plants, they're everyone's medicine, but it's how you're using them respectfully. Are they foraged, wild, crafted, gathered, preyed upon, all of those amazing things that help with the relationship with the plant? And I feel that sometimes when people hear I'm a curandera, they think I only work with the indigenous plants of my area. And even though that might be an area of expertise for me, I still embrace some of the other plants that were also passed down through my culture because of colonization. And doing so was very healing for me to think that, wow, maybe 500 years ago, there was a little someone else's grandma Chiquita, somewhere in the Iberian Peninsula, and was using these medicines. And even though I'm healing from all of the acts of genocide and whatnot as an indigenous person, I feel somehow this beautiful connection to those grandmother healers, that their medicines also survived, and our indigenous grandmothers saw their value, and that has been very healing for me. And that's what I really wish for this next generation coming up, that they also can embrace it with much more ease, I think, and less judgment than some of the things that we've had to go through now for those of my age.
So encouraging the next generation to embrace your whole selves with ease, even if parts of that include colonization and those shadow parts of society and humanity that is really difficult to embrace.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Felicia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Will you please let our listeners know how to find you on social media and in the world?
Yes, thank you for asking. So I am most active on Instagram. It's a platform for me where I absolutely love sharing a lot of free content. And so if you're on there, I am at Kitchen Curandera. That's the name of my business. And the same name for my website. So you can hop on over to kitchencurandera.com. And I also have so many recipes and information and things like this lovely podcast. I keep all of that organized there as well.
Fabulous. So you can find Felicia at kitchencurandera.com and also on Instagram at kitchencurandera. Or just Kitchen Curandera on Instagram. And thank you so much for listening to Tea Talks with Jiling on Herbal Radio. You can learn more about me at jilinglin.com. And until next time, happy herbal adventures. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.